Hello, hello, hello. So, this is Sunday evening. It's my last live of Comic Con Worlds. My daughter is here next to me, watching TV. So, YouTube is working fine. Now I've just got to connect to the Comic Con website. That's just a second. That should do it. Just another minute to see if it's all connected up and transmitting. There's a slight delay to what I say getting onto YouTube, and then another delay between YouTube and the Comic-Con website. But not sure. No, there was playback problem. I mean, I suppose the whole of the internet might be having traffic problems. I know that some people haven't managed to get onto the Comic-Con website. Some people are having connections at one point. It was tough for me also, but it seems it's working. Great. Let me just check the sound. Yep, the sound is working too. Lovely. So, the last live, again, it's going to be probably around 20 minutes. Um, I wanted to talk a bit about having parallel careers, being that I have a comic career and an illustration career here in Brazil, and also over the last almost 20 years, I've also been pursuing my comic career abroad, and very few times these two paths have connected or crossed over. I think the main um, point of crossover was quite recently with Atomic Blonde, because that was something that got worldwide attention, and it was also published here in Brazil. But so since then, there's been more of a crossover, but really for about 10, 12 years, it was like two parallel careers, two parallel worlds. You know, I was publishing things over there that were not published here, such as Starship Troopers, and I was publishing things here that were not published in England. I did an adaptation of Hamlet and another couple of adaptations of historical texts. I did fanzines here, and it's funny because I just found recently so I was going through my things. One of one of the things that kick-started, so to speak, my career there and here was the publication of this little story, which is a story about a golem set in the Second World War. Now, when I went to England in 2004, um, I took some pages, and the next year I photocopied onto regular size paper, and I did a tiny little version. I translated the whole story. It's 24 pages of a golem attacking soldiers in a synagogue that actually exists, and it's based around a legend that actually exists as well. It was written by Marcelo Godoy, and I drew it and I did the lettering. And as I said, so I went to England, I photocopied the whole story, a lot of black, but it worked. And on the cover, I did it on a red piece of cardboard, or um, a harder piece of paper. So this I actually sold in UCAC, at UCAC. I sold it at my table. I did 20, maybe 50 copies, and I sold it for £2 each. Now, Marcella and we actually made a proper printed version. This is the small British version of the fanzine. As I said, very few copies, and we did 1,000 of these copies. So this was properly printed out and it sold out quite quickly um, over the course of a year. So this was great fun. It hasn't been ever published by a publisher, but there were these two versions. That people in England have never seen the proper printed version, and people in Brazil up until now had never seen the small, real fanzine version. But that was 2004, 2005. And since then, I mean, that is really what got me the job, both for Starship Troopers with Tony Lee, which then went on to the Heroes and Heroines series at Walker Books. And it also got me the job with Anthony Johnson for Atomic Blonde, The Coldest City. He really enjoyed the black and white artwork, and that is what he remembered when he had this story, this spy story, many years later. Let me just say hello to Felipe. Hi, Felipe. Good to see you here. So that was an interesting thing that happened. That the same story gave me two different careers in England and Brazil. Uh, Something else that I was reminded of as I was looking through my stack of comics and that I've produced, that I've worked on, was the Starship Troopers. So the Starship Troopers was my first work with Tony Lee, and it was one full volume of work, 90 odd pages for Mongoose Publishing in black and white, and I worked with Rodrigo, who was my colleague. We shared a flat at the time, and I did the pencil work, and he did black and white rendering over digital rendering over my pencils. So he would smudge and he would do the lighting, and it looked great. And it was then later picked up by Marcosia, and Marcosia split it into four color volumes. It was colored, if I'm not wrong, by Kieran Oates. That's right. And I did a few extra pages for each chapter. By then, Rodrigo had already started coloring for DC Comics, Superman, and other adventures. Um, and then I went on to do other things with Tony. And so the second volume, which was this one, I did not draw, although for the collected edition, I did do the cover, but I didn't draw the four issues. Now, halfway through volume 3, there was a problem. If I'm not wrong, the artist was quite late with the issues, and so Tony called me up and he said, "Hey, we need some help here. Can you come in and do the last two issues?" And it was quite interesting, the feeling that I had at the time, because the first volume, it was, all three volumes are with the same main characters. So this guy here, he's a rookie when he starts out. So the first volume is his first adventure. We see him and his best friends getting into the troopers and going off, doing the training, going off on their first adventure. Somebody dies, somebody almost dies. He has to rescue them, and so it was very much a rookie adventure. How do you deal with this thing? And that is what I was feeling like at the time. Wow, this is my first comic, proper published. With the same. I think I mentioned this before. The same ink that I remember from my childhood. I've received the comic from the publisher, and wow, it's got that smell of childhood. So this was like my first proper foray into comics, and it was the story of somebody having also a similar kind of feeling with, wow, what is this? What is going on? And by the time the third volume came out, the story here, he had already had another four issues. So by now he is the experienced guy, and there's another group of rookies, uh, people that he has to train, and now he has to tell, how you deal with the bugs like this and you shoot like that, so he's experienced. And by then, I had more stories under my belt, and I had produced quite a few stories with Tony, and also here in Brazil, I had published a comic with colleagues. I had been editing the comic as well, not just writing and drawing, but also editing. So I felt more experienced. This is about a year or so, maybe a bit more later, and so the story reflected very much what was going on with my life or in my career. So it was a very similar uh, moment in the character's life and my life. I thought it quite interesting, these similarities. Um, the other thing that I wanted to show is, I mentioned that when I was 6 is when I decided this is what I want to do. I loved comics. I read every kind of comic, and I remember looking at Superman with a José Luis Garcia Lopez cover on it, and I thought, this is amazing. This is what I want to do. And I also, I remember reading comics and looking out the window and thinking, wow, this is, what kind of adventures am I going to create? And another friend, a colleague also, he pointed out that um, comics are amazing for various reasons, but also they give you the opportunity of creating and controlling a whole world. You can create the world, the characters, you decide what they do, how they go, you decide what the place is going to look like. It's been compared quite often to making a movie, but you're everything on the movie. You're the director, the writer, you're the guy who looks after the illumination, the dialogue, the characters, costumes, everything. So it was, yeah, it was kind of that one of the things that made me decide to make comics, draw comics, and have this as a career. And that has been 40 years ago. So it doesn't, it really doesn't seem that long, but yeah, 40 years ago, I decided I wanted to do comics. And then my first fanzines were when I was 14. So between 14 and 16 is when I did quite a few fanzines by myself and with friends. And that's 30 years ago. And then my first professional published work was when I was 21, 22 with comics. I had been doing illustration in quite a few places before that, including college newspapers and such. And but when I was 21, I did the biography of Marilyn Monroe with a friend of mine, Alexandre Joubrin, who I had helped do backgrounds for on a few issues of Daredevil that he had illustrated, and then we worked together on this Marilyn Monroe biography. So anyway, that was 25 years ago, and the last couple of years, apart from the smaller sketchbooks with more recent work, I also did two large sketchbooks that I wanted to make a chronicle of sorts of the the whole gamut, the whole timeline between my first drawings and creations when I was a kid, and inspirations, and then first comic pages. I think very much influenced by Bernie Wrightson, and you know things, trying out styles, line work, anatomy, sketching. So this is from when I was probably 6 to 16, and this is a short story from my college years, and then more recent stuff, studying, and this is 70 odd pages. Here's some Starship Troopers work, King Arthur. This is the Hamlet. So studies, and the cover. And then it comes up to recent days, illustrations, and commissions. So I did 2 volumes. I did the first one. I enjoyed it so much, but obviously, illustrators and comic artists, we're drawing every day. There's just so much paper in our house. I've just cleaned out like 2 boxes full of really old stuff, or stuff that just wasn't that interesting. I've thrown it away, managed to clean up a bit of my studio. But there's just so much. So, just one sketchbook with this timeline, it wasn't enough. I had much more. And so I did a second one. And this is actually the first proper story that I never completed, as most of our first efforts. But this is the one that I really, put my heart in. By then, I had discovered The Spirit by Will Eisner here in Brazil. I didn't know of him in England, but the way he used to work on page layouts and put interesting things in the gutter, and just the narrative. And so I was 11 years old when I did those 2 pages, which took me to do my first fanzine at school, and then a few other pieces from fanzines. And as I said, it's exactly the same idea as the first, which is works and sketches and layouts from various periods of time. When I went to England in 95 and 97, 95, 96, 97, there was a comic convention in London. And I remember showing Mike Carlin these 2 pages, and he gave me some really good advice on page layout and controlling the flow of information. I did at the time also a lot of sample pages for Judge Dredd. I remember sending this in to Andy Diggle, who was assistant editor at the time before he started writing, or before he started publishing. This is the Swamp Thing here was the first piece I sent to Adrian Brown for the Just One Page benefit anthology. And then again, plenty of studies and things from my drawing class here in Brazil. And again, same thing. This one I put in a bit more of the watercolors I've been playing with and trying out more recently. This was also a Lobo and Batman illustration for Adrian at Just One Page. And then I'd like to show this is also quite recent. This is cartoony stuff, and here also a cartoon style page. So I've been fascinated with comics, every kind of comic possible, and I love cartooning. I love exaggerated poses and characters, but I also love superheroes and classic anatomy in the Alex Raymond style. So I've tried to draw, or at least there was a period, there was the first 10 years of my career. So it's been like 25 years since my first proper professional published work. And for the first 10, maybe 12 years of that career, I would draw anything in any style. So, when I began showing my portfolio, whatever the editor needed, I would draw. I worked for almost a year doing animation in the Walt Disney style, working on Aladdin, the TV series. So I learned how to draw in that very cartoony, fluid style. lots of round edges, and it was great. I studied a lot, and studying movement, animation. I was doing the in-betweening and the cleanup. So I could draw Donald Duck and every other Disney character, which was very helpful a couple of years later when I was in England and drawing VR Troopers and Power Rangers. And I also would draw the odd Disney character, which the same publisher was doing. So so I've drawn, as I said, for the first 10 years, I would draw anything. So I'd draw serious stuff, realistic stuff, photorealistic, cartoony, Disney, indie, so anything, you know, 50s style, old, woodcut style, anything that an editor needed, I was game for. And I think this is what I tell my students often is that you can have two. There are different ways of approaching style. One is, as what I've just pointed out, you can be eclectic. You can have every kind of style in the book, and there are advantages, which is an editor can call you for whatever kind of work. But there are disadvantages, which that the editor won't remember you for one specific style. Um, And the opposite is true as well. You can go for one specific style, and people will remember you for that style. Oh, we need something just like that. I know the right person, but they won't call you when they need anything else except for that style. And I think there's always time. If you have one style, there's time in your life, in your career, to learn different styles. And if you have a lot of styles, there is time in your career for you to focus on those styles that really interest you, or that you think that can benefit your career. This is the style I want. These are the kind of stories I want to tell, and that's what I've done. So the first half of my career up to now is, I draw anything in any style as best I possibly could, and the second half, the last 10, 12 years, I've been focusing on two very different, but for me, complementary styles, which is one quite realistic, which is what I've been using for 10 Lost Days here in the background, and also quite a lot of what I've just shown, the Starship Troopers, the Gollum story, and also the Heroes and Heroines collection. That's Lara. She's enjoying herself. Um, and I put both of these. I'll just get to Flavio. Flavio's Federico. Hi, Federico. And Flavio has a question. Flavio has a question, but I'll reply to you in just a second. I just want to show Mega Ultra, which is where I've put both of these styles together. So this was actually, it was my first creator-owned work, where I was writing and drawing. It was the first one in just over 10 years. And I decided, okay, this is the point in my career where I want to show the two styles that I'm comfortable with and that I want to continue working with. So these are the two styles that I'm going to focus on from now onwards. So there's the realistic style, which is the superhero battling the villain in the Amazon jungle. But there is also the cartoony style. And this part of the story shows the creators of the superhero comic that you're reading. So there are two different narratives that are blended together in the same story. And the story alternates from one narrative to the next over the course of the story. And, I was very interested in the themes of, nature, the Amazon jungle. Laura's just nicked the comic here. Um, uh, Indians, native Brazilians, and how they relate to Earth, to the planet. And I also wanted to talk about comics and how we create comics and how we write comics, and also what the relationship is while you're making a comic. So the two stories, the two narratives, influence each other throughout the story. It's a 48-page story, and slowly they influence each other. So you see when the guy is having a bad time, that's going to reflect on the character, on the superhero, and vice versa. Sometimes, in the story that you're creating, you find solutions for your own life. So, Flavio asks about advice for someone who wants to have a career as an illustrator. What should they do or not do? Well, the first thing, Flavio was a student of mine, and the first thing is have a portfolio. And that portfolio should show what you can do. So you should have the style or the styles that you're comfortable with, um, and it should also have the themes that you're comfortable with. Don't draw stuff that might look great on the page. You might be very successful in rendering a scene, but if you're not interested in drawing that kind of scene, don't show it, because the editor will look at your work and think of you for that kind of stuff. So if you like cars, draw cars. If you like people, draw people. If you like historical stuff, draw historical stuff. So think of 2 or 3 themes that you really enjoy and draw those. And if so, specifically, Flavio is asking about work as an illustrator. For comic pages, the advice is similar, but then you also have to show narrative. You can tell a story from panel to panel, and you can lay out a page in a visually agreeable way. Um, and other advice that I would have, but specifically for an illustrator, I think those are the two main characteristics: a style you enjoy and things that you enjoy. Then how to go about getting into contact with editors. In my day, um, uh, 20 odd years ago, there was not the internet, and even when I began working, the internet was, it was very crude, and we had to, although people were working on the computers, it was a transitional phase. There were still a lot of illustrators who were working on paper, but the computer had already began. I was working in Photoshop and 3D, and we had to save it on. We wouldn't fit on a floppy, so that we zip disks up to 100 megabytes, and we'd have to go down to the publishers and deliver the artwork. So in my day, what I would recommend, what I did, and I would recommend to colleagues and students is go to the newsagent, have a look at the magazines that you're interested in, have a look at the back where all the names are, and check out the art director, and give them a call. Call them up and say, hey, I want to show you my portfolio. What's the best day for coming around? And over the years, they started putting their emails in. So I'd say the same thing: send an email and try to make an appointment. Nowadays, I'm guessing it's mostly done online. So have your portfolio online, be it at Behance or Instagram or anywhere else. Put your at least 20 best pieces online and email the places that you're interested in illustrating for. It can be websites, news websites, nowadays pop culture websites, uh, but also physical places like newspapers and magazines. So go for the places that you're interested in first, and quite often, you'll get referrals from one art director to another, and they'll be able to point you in the next direction. Okay, well, Giuliano also has a 3-year-old. who is keeping him busy on the top of his toes. Federico pointed out that he hadn't seen my cartoony style. Yeah, so yeah, those are the two styles that I really enjoy working in. And I showed these in a different live, but this was also the cartoony style. These were two pamphlets that I did on two laws here in Brazil, one for joint custody and the other parental alienation. And so that was in a very cartoony style as well. And also very bright colors. I mean, the themes are very serious, but not a lot of people know about these laws. So I got together with a couple of friends. One friend wrote the story, and the other did the colors. And we wanted to present it in the least negative light possible. So not dark. It's the parental alienation is about basically parents who split up, and they don't manage to have a friendly relationship, even though they have kids from their marriage, and that often, is very negative for the children if they can't have healthy relationships with both the mother and the father. So the theme here is really serious. I mean, the cover is a split family, and but apart from all the ills that come from this, we wanted to point out that there are healthy ways of dealing with this situation. And so I find that the cartoony style is very helpful in, depending on the thematic, the theme, the um, whatever it is I want to point out. And there's also great fun to be had with cartooning. The movement, more exaggerated. You can draw stars around people's faces, or little birdies tweeting, and it can be much more playful than the realistic style. And I think that one helps the other. Jack Kirby, for example, he worked um, with Popeye animation for some time before he did superheroes, and other great comic artists with realistic styles. If I'm not wrong, Neil Adams as well has done cartoony stuff, and Alex Ross has done a few sketches and I think maybe pages in the Batman animated style. So I think one style does help the other. You can get more serious with a cartoony style if you know the more realistic proportions and points of view and stuff, and you can put more dynamism into your realistic artwork if you know how to do cartoony stuff. Great. So we've hit the half-hour mark here, and it's been great with participation of the public. But I'm going to wrap this up. There's still a few more hours to go at Comic Con Worlds, and you can visit me there on my page at the Artist Alley. If I'm not wrong, the Artist Alley is going to be up. It's going to be online for the whole of this next week, so you can still see the pieces that are there. The YouTube videos will be up um, on YouTube, and I'll probably put them onto the Comic Con Worlds page as well. And check out my stuff on my webpage, which is samhartgraphics.com, my Instagram, which is samrahart, and I'm on Twitter and Facebook. And it's been great being here, talking about my work and practicing my English as well. So great, guys. Thanks, Federico, Giuliano, and Filippi, and Flavio. All the best.